Obrigado por virem ao segundo dia destas conferências aqui na Faculdade de Arquitetura do Porto. Quero, em primeiro lugar, agradecer aos curadores, aos comissários deste encontro, à Teresa Novaes, ao Luís Tavares Pereira, agradecer, obviamente, também à Faculdade de Arquitetura e ao diretor da Faculdade de Arquitetura esta oportunidade. Não é muito habitual, de alguma forma, reunirmos-nos todos dentro destas temáticas e, de alguma forma, abordar as preocupações que nos envolvem e que nos, de alguma forma, motivam a trabalhar e a tentar trazer algo de melhor para todos nós e para a população. E, portanto, é com muito prazer que estou aqui a apresentar os nossos colegas alemães e portugueses para o próximo debate, que se vai iniciar agora. Eu vou, entretanto, começar e passar para inglês, enfim, a moderação e a apresentação dos arquitetos. Vamos apresentar, primeiramente, os Maslab em termos de apresentação e depois o Christoph Wenka, aliás, o Christoph Wagner e a Wenka Schladitz. Christoph Wagner and Wenka Schladitz have worked in Berlin, Paris and New York. Since 2009, they have their own studio in Berlin, where they explore new ways of living and coexistence, whether in housing programs or other types of programs. Recently, they have directed their practice and research towards the creation of spaces for vulnerable groups, such as the LGBTQIA+ community, and people with various disabilities and refugees, that is, people with experiences of discrimination. In addition to several new buildings in Berlin, recently they made projects for the rehabilitation and reuse of buildings. Christoph and Wenka hope that this type of projects will become more and more important in architecture and in their practice, and so on, with the future that will become more concerned about these topics and the reuse strategies. Maslab was founded in Porto in 2016 by Duarte Fontes, Diogo Rocha and Lourenço Rodrigues, and this is an architecture and planning company focused on research and development of solutions for the changes of the world that we are living in. Through the approach focused on factors that could affect quality of life and the planet, and in coming years, Maslab seeks the condition for a better future. From an early age, Maslab achieved some international recognition through participation in public competitions and awarding prizes in Finland and Denmark while working in Portuguese market. All three of them were graduated from FAUP in Porto. Diogo Sousa Rocha has begun his professional career in São Paulo, Brazil, in 2013, and in 2021 he completed his executive MBA at Porto Business School, and recently he completed his executive training in Berkeley, California, focusing in the innovation and sustainability. Lourenço Menezes Rodrigues has collaborated with ODA here in Porto and projects in Europe and Asia. From 2013 and 2014, he worked with Kengo Kuma and associates in Paris. From 2014 to 2015, he worked with Oma Remkoolers in Rotterdam as creative architect. Duarte Ramalho Fontes, since 2007, collaborates with some of the Porto architects, such as Camilo Rebelo, Graça Correia, and Adalberto Dias. From 2011 until now, I think, he collaborated with Oda and in Porto and Big Bjark Engels in Copenhagen, and now is one of the Maslab architects. So we are going to start with Maslab. and you have your time.
Portanto, se achas bem fazer isto? So, first of all, thank you very much. It's always amazing to understand that someone is willing to hear what we have to say about what we do every day. So first of all, thank you, Teresa and Luis and FAUP for the invitation. It's with a great joy and honor that we are here today. So we prepared this presentation in the same way that basically we think about our office. We are not going to go through projects from the beginning until the end. What we are going to do is the thing that we do in the office is to talk about the things that concern us the most. So this is a picture of us, a pretty recent picture. We have people from different nationalities, different backgrounds, different cultures. So normally we think differently, but mainly we think. And by saying this, I think first, before any sketch, before starting the project, we create a kind of an agenda, something that shall drives us, some topics, issues, problematics, or ideas, as we want to call them, ideas that shall be present in each project that we do. Ideas like more sustainable and more affordable living, how can we merge community and nature. We always think how to design the public before the private. How is this new way of living? How was the living before? How can we live today? What are the needs that we need to think of? So basically, these are some topics there where we are going to present. So we imagine and design spaces from urban plans to buildings and landscapes to create a better everyday life. It's through a planet people approach that we build conditions for the future. Because changing how people live will always change the world. And here you can start to see a kind of a method that we do in the office. Because we think differently, because the world is always changing, we never go with one solution from the beginning till the end. We do a lot of options, iterations, as we call them, and we go with, for instance, 4 or 5 iterations for the same problematic, and we put them to tests and see what comes next. This is a kind of a provocative quote. The client is never right, but actually they are never right, and we think that we know a bit better than the client what are the problematics, what's the need of the future. So we don't talk about adjectives or aesthetics. We talk about metrics and numbers. What you can see in here are 4 different approaches or iterations, as we call them, for the same problematic, same site, same context, but thinking differently. So in the first one, we have a kind of a perimeter block. In the second one, we have a linear building. In the third one, it's towers. And the fourth one is a kind of a mix between the towers and a rising ground. So this is what we call to put things into a test. So the metrics that you see below are basically the pros and the cons of each solution. So it's not regarding what we think it's best, it's what the project knows it's best for the context, the solution, and the needs. the world is constantly changing. I think it's changing right now with issues and themes that we never thought of, technologically, politically, economically, sustainably speaking. So we do this kind of a game. We think in the future, so that's why we call it 100 years. But at the same time, we always think about the same issues every 6 months, because what we think is the correct for the future at this moment can change completely in the near future. So by saying this, we don't have a manifesto, we have an attitude. It's not what we feel it's better for the world, it's what the world needs at this moment. So for designing for a hopeful future, we need to think about the new living models. We know right now that the way you used to live before and the needs that we used to have before are not mandatory right now. So we are not projecting when we are doing a building, a housing building, for instance. We cannot think in our mind in this common family of one parent, one father, one mother, two child. There's a lot of needs more than that, and what we feel is like we need to create bases. We need to create a structure that is flexible enough to adapt to the world, adapt to the needs. So in these 4 images, we can understand that everybody's been doing this for centuries. The humans always have adapted to their context. Here I'm showing actually this was the first project that we did in Maslav together. It was a project for Faroe Islands. It's an island in the middle of Atlantic, and as an island they have this principle of living in these slope terrains, but at the same time gathering. They prefer to live close to each other, but in groups of houses. So basically what we did here was to try to reinterpret their way of living, the vernacular construction, and try to adapt, of course, in a contemporary way of living. So basically we took some of their main principles. We tried to gather in terms of layout for different types of houses into the same common ground, into the same courtyard, so they could share their life in this common yard. They could share their problems, their needs, but at the same time we create this metric that allows us to start from this gather of 4 and to create a mesh of a city. So in here we build, as you see in the model, in the middle photo, we create this structure in concrete, and on the top we create we put a house that is adaptable to each need, because this is completely different of what they do. They just copy the house next door. They actually when we were there, they told us, and we were asking, oh, you hired an architect to do your house? No, I just asked the construction guy to do the same that I saw in that street over there. So basically they copy, and nothing in their way of living is adapt of their needs. So basically what we did is a concrete basis that adapts to the slopes of the site, and then by understanding the needs of each person, each family, we create a different house on the top with different programs. So this is again a strategy of trying to adapt to the needs. That was the first project. Then we start developing this idea of how can we create a plan that of course has a rigid structure, but at the same time can adapt to different needs. That's what we did in the past projects that we have been doing in terms of housing here in Portugal. So the necessity dictates use and habits. Here you can see it's the same plan, the same structure, a rigid structure, but everybody, when they are occupying, can adapt to each need. It can be a dining room, it can be a living room, it can be a room, it can be a kitchen, a bedroom. And here you see exactly the same thing. So as you see, it's the same plan with different types of occupation. So from one person to another, you basically experience different types of plans and different types of experience.
Hi, everyone. So as Lorenzo was saying, we try to organize our projects on our agenda. And one of the biggest agenda is to design public space before private one. And I can recall that Palmeiras da Rocha states that people that live on top of the towers, they simply don't live because they are so detached from public life, they don't live. And we want to go from segregation to community. And I want to show an example. This is a project that we worked in Tampere. This is the second largest city in Finland. And so the project was in this area, so area completely detached from the city. And although it's a master plan project, we want to have like this sense of creating public space before private one. And as you can see here, we try to have, sorry, just a second. So we wanted like to have like this main axis, these three main axes. So this fast track that connects with the city center, but also this neighborhood connection where all the inhabitants can meet. And obviously, like on a shoreline scale, this leisure line. And we try to create like this in connection with the urban context, this kind of like social pockets that would strategically place to promote and to have public life. So we, as mentioned, we try to create like these social pockets, but also to try to promote some hierarchy between, so from private space to shared space to this kind of a leisure area on the shoreline. And we feel it's quite cool, this example, because the community was at the core of this development. The municipality wanted a school at the core of, not only a school, like a community center at the core of this master plan. And we feel this is quite interesting. We know that the scope of this seminar is living, but we cannot detach living from public space or from community or even from learning. And so this, at the center of the master plan, there was this school by day and a community center by night. Now, like another example of this principle, this in Lisbon, so this Basílica da Estrela, that is one of Portuguese national monuments. And actually we were quite happy on this because it's our second project that actually was dismilitarized, because right now this belongs to the military defense, and the idea is to give it back to the city, to the inhabitants. It's actually our second project we are doing this, and it's quite happy for us at least to demilitarize these plots and to open again to the city where it belongs. And we also it was quite a project. I mean, it's quite intimidating to have like a national monument with this importance. But we also we are seeking to have like a continuity of an unfinished city, right? So we had like these blocks that were pre-finished, or these weird endings happening. So our basic idea was to reconnect this urban network, but again, because design public space is to designed in the beginning, we thought, okay, so giving more room to the basilica and to have like a garden, and then a public square over here at south, and to promote like this network of spaces around where the inhabitants and also the citizens can enjoy this network of public spaces. Again, it's quite tough to talk about like living without talk about like public life and building cities, and this is quite important issue for us. So how to generate like a public space where the inhabitants can meet, but also areas of like semi-public value, like this, where you can gather and you have like this sharing space that belongs to the inhabitants. This is just showing a bit like the different environments of the public space and how we try to reconnect with the basilica. So this project was promoted by IRU, so the national organism promotes housing. That's is promoting like a lot of projects. And we know it's quite tough and a bit conservative brief from them, but we still had this sense of creating like public space and a network of space around. In terms of like the interior, we couldn't, the brief was quite conservative, we couldn't play, so we thought, okay, let's invest like on the public space and on the areas around. But there's no purpose on talking about like public space, designing public space before private one, if we cannot think on a shared living. And with this environment that is so challenging and so demanding in terms of economically, in terms of it lacks, our planet's lacking a lot of space. And so we start thinking that, okay, it doesn't make sense to privatize everything because we cannot afford it. So why not sharing some rooms of our place? I mean, we can have like examples from laundry space, but for example in Finland we already felt that with saunas, for example, that not only promotes the sense of belonging and community, but also, I mean, it's more feasible in terms of economic, it's smarter, and we can all save space, money, and at the same time generating community. But for us, this is nothing new. I mean, this is something that we already feel, and here we can see it's like some image in Porto, like laundry space was already shared, public life, obviously, but even in terms of parties, São João, or having dinner with your neighbors. And I'm showing this because we're working on a small ilha. I don't know if I can translate to Iceland. a small ilha in Bairro Maria Vitorina that is in Fontainhas. And we thought, okay, these themes were already there. And for us, this was quite intriguing. So we're not proposing something new, and we're just basically in this example to kind of like demolish the old structures that they don't have like the conditions of living, or that they don't promote this sense of shared areas. And we wanted to stabilize a bit like the topography, so we have room for these shared areas, and obviously it's like some greenery to generate like an active community. We also had to reduce the number of houses because within this plot of 1,500 square meters, there was like 24 houses. That is quite dramatic. So we try to reduce the number of houses to provide better conditions. And we had like this idea of so replacing the former the structures that they don't have like a lot of quality, and kind of like stabilize the topography on these platforms. So we have like these different areas of shared areas where you have like this communal living. A different example of this, and actually that merges a bit like this sense of design public for private, but also the shared space for all, was at a way more bigger scale, so Quartel Monte Pedral. Again, we are quite happy that it's the second plot that has been demilitarized to being open again to the city. And so this was a space, an area of the city, this is the Rotunda Boa Vista, that lack a lot of public space. And we had like this brief that put a lot of pressure on the plots, like 50,000 square meters for a 25,000 area square meters plot. So we had this, again, this principle of designing public before private, so kind of like connecting the streets around, but actually to provide like also the room for smaller space, so for shared areas for the inhabitants. So from urban gardens to urban farming to playgrounds to multifunctional areas, because to provide this and at this public level is as important as designing the apartments. And we had, so because we cannot fit, and the world is constantly evolving, and we cannot fit living into just a single type of family, we try to create an array of possibilities that promote like the flexibility, and by intertwining like this sense of like the public, the shared areas, and the private, we promote this sense of community and of a more sustainable city. So we only use what we want on the shared. We promote like the public space to enhance public life, and the private, because we obviously still need to sleep quietly. So you can see the network of different spaces and the different values of the areas.
Hi guys, thanks. It's great to be here. So this is another idea that we use a lot in the office of Merging Nature and Community. And this basically means that we need to adapt the structures that we create in order they can actually adapt for this outdoors-indoor relation but also to foster social activity and social interaction. I will explain you like in two projects, one in more urban scale and the other one in a smaller scale, how we use this idea in order to bring up our projects. This is in Setúbal, in a bairro da Bela Vista, that is probably one of the poorest neighborhoods in Portugal. And this is a clear case where the urban planning failed to promote social interaction. But here we were like in this in-between areas that we had a protected green area on the south, and on the north we need to connect to the urban structure. So what we decided to do is like to create a strong earth edge in the north and actually start doing a gradient of construction in order to connect these urban parts with the green park that we had on the south. Here we can see like the scattered buildings from the park, and here like how we use like our this gradient to create and promote the close connection between views, between park and the interior of the apartments. Here from the urban part to the green park in the end. In between from urban to green, we created the opportunity to create like these social pockets in between the urban blocks. And on each pocket, we placed like a different program. So here, for example, we had like the leisure pocket, the sports one with the sports activities, and the playground pocket. The idea is basically by creating this urban infrastructure that we can actually foster social interaction and foster community. So we had a project in between urban and green, but also that promotes social interaction. Another example here is now in the north of Portugal, in a completely different context. We didn't have any urban planning, as you can see, and the existing surroundings are completely like disaggregated, from single houses to industrial plots to schools. So it was quite difficult, and we felt that we need to do something radical in order to try and unify this plot and these surroundings. So we did one simple gesture of creating a line that would try to work as a horizontal landmark in the surroundings. But then we actually created a problem for ourselves. So how can we merge actually this part that was the agricultural part or the farmland of the surroundings if we create a wall? It's quite difficult, so we started like to perforate this big mass in order to create the opportunity for crossing, but also the opportunity for like covered public space. So we basically did like these huge voids in the building that would have the ambition to create like a public space that could work not just in summertime, but also in the winter time. So we were creating like these covered plazas along the building. On the end of these covered plazas, to mediate the relation with the farmland, we created a couple of social pockets in order, so it was like an indoor and outdoor plazas in the close relation with nature. So we created a public spaces that bends into the green. As you can see here, like this long line of over 100 meters was able to create like a couple of public spaces, a network that we hope that will merge with the city that was lacking for a lot of these spaces. A smaller example, even in Porto, I will try to merge nature and community within a building, not relating exactly with the city, is in Covelo, here in Porto, and we were in a plot that connects like the existing urbanate with the hidden rural part of Porto that we can see here. So in this small project, what we try to create is like to merge within the building, like a built landscape that would actually promote like social interaction between neighbors. So it was a community within the building, and also to bring the greenery to the entire building complex. We did this not just by chance, but because it was a response to the immediate surroundings of our plot. It was a very complicated plot. We'd have industry, collective housing, single housing, so really diverse. And what we did here is that we tried actually to connect the dots. And the output is actually the result of the connecting of these dots. And in the end, we had like this kind of each apartment with promoting like a relation between indoors and outdoors, but also like a common ground in the middle, creating this valley idea, but also the idea that we hope to be like a close community because we are in a close connection with your neighbors. Now another idea that we use in that also like is like transversal to our projects is like this people-planet approach, something that that considers both people and planet at the same time, not one over the other. This basically means in terms of housing that we don't consider the housing as the centerpiece of a bigger network, but actually as an integrated piece in a more complex network. This means that when you do, for example, urban plannings, you consider like food production, energy production, like connection to the smooth connectivity of the city. So in order to explain you this, or to show you how we do it, this is a urban plan that we did in near Lisbon, in Loures. So it's like a kind of eco-village that has an ambitious program that goes from affordable housing to health center, to retail space, to office space, and even like small industries. And what we did here is like, because we were like in the middle of the nature, is like to bend all this construction with the existing nature. The plot was like quite slopey, so it allowed us to actually mix our buildings within the nature. And we did this by using a way of thinking that considers like what we call the cycles. This is like an holistic approach to urban planning that considers people and planet. And we did like consider like the social cycle that basically represents all the urban structures that the squares, plazas, and pedestrian routes, but also the economic cycle. This means that we were able to design with the client like affordable housing that could like actually grow in time, but also mixing another activities such as retail space and office space. The water cycle, this means because we were in the middle of also the farmland, we wanted to create like a water retention basin within our plot that would help feed the agricultural fields in summertime. And the environmental cycle that represents, because the plot was fully like occupied by eucalyptus, that is a species that actually damages the autochthonous species. We took it out, we preserved the cork trees that were there, and we actually planted more autochthonous species on site. And finally, the production cycle that was respecting the materials we chose to do this plan. So we couldn't not have like all these sustainable ideas and in the end come up with a brand new stone for the pavements. So we are now working with some quarries to use like the recycled stone. So that comes from another construction in order to build all the roads and all the public surfaces. And for the buildings, we are studying the possibility of using just wood for the main constructions. And all these cycles together represent this idea of having a holistic approach for urban planning. In the same project, regarding like construction, we did so, the terrain was really steep. So in order to mediate this relation with the plot, we used like concrete structures made in situ. But for the upper level structures, we used like a CLT, like a wood structure, light wood that could adapt to the existing slope and actually could grow in time. This was like actually the main idea from that we were able to put in this project, is that in order to make the housing affordable, we tried to recreate that idea of incremental, that we can actually grow the houses in time. So the upper structures of wood could be able to, in the future, to start growing. So it's like the module that would be really easy to attach and grow with the families. So going from a model that was like the family, when it grows, needs to change the house, we are trying to do a model where the house can adapt to the growing necessities of each family. And now just a small example of an open call for co-creation of a really interesting project that we are doing in Almada. This is a housing project with controlled costs. And we wanted somehow to create some greenery on the facade, but we were in the controlled costs. So we had an issue that we don't have money to build like inbuilt pots or flower pots on the facade, and we cannot have a building that is really high-end to maintain. So how can we do this? So we came up with a facade system that had like inbuilt voids on the facade prefab panels that was connected to the rooftop water collecting system and filters in order to irrigate the future plants. So each resident could be able to put their own plants on the facade, and this facade could adapt with the use of each inhabitant. The idea was like, okay, it can be a super green facade if people collaborate on building it, but actually if they don't, it's going to be more a concrete building. But the idea is like to foster this sense of taking care, to foster this sense that in order to respect our neighbor, we need also to take care of our own living. So, thank you guys.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for the invitation to come here to this, I think not only interesting but really important conference. Thank you, Teresa, and thank you, Luis, for organizing and starting this project. Because as I said yesterday in like small discussions, this is something that we, coming from Berlin, we have not had in the last years, that the universities and faculties come together and really talk about these issues who are so important for not only for our profession as architects, of course, but especially for our profession. And I also want to encourage the students. I'm happy there's a lot of students here, and into the discussion later. I hope we find some time for the discussion. And I have this personal wish that from this part of the auditorium we get at least 2 questions later. So this is addressed to this side of the audience, so please feel free to ask questions. So as Ricardo said, Wenke and me worked together for 15 years in Berlin. This is where our office is, and now we're getting right in the heart of the discussion or the topic, because we talk a lot of architecture today, a lot of concepts and designs. But when you look at this fabric of the city, this is Berlin, Kreuzberg, Neukölln, you might have visited these areas, and you see a very dense city, and you see a city that is not, it was not made and developed on one like master plan. You recognize this small partition of houses, and that is how this city 130 years ago was built or developed. So it was not, so each house had its own client or its own, usually not an architect, but a masonry guy who was capable of doing these houses. So this is how these areas, these boroughs developed, and also what a lot of people now, visitors or people who live there, think is so charming on it. There's sometimes also a lack of planning. This is what I want to refer to, and also the private responsibility of a lot of people, not only one client, but we get later to this topic. So we want to talk about these 3 projects we want to present. It's a project we did 7 years ago. It's a shared space, Malmöer Straße. It's where like 24 apartments of different owners, they built a group and we built the house together. And then there's the project Lovo. Wenke Schladitz, my colleague, will present. And the LOVE, these are both projects for the LGBTQ community, but you will get more information about this later. So more than housing, and our title was for those who need it. So that's what we talked about yesterday, that's what we discussed today. We think about how do we build, how do we design for the future, first for this contemporary community, for the needs of the people, for the changing community. We talked about that the model of the typical family is changing, it's changing how we live together. And so these are the people, it could be any picture, but so this should be the people in charge of, these should be our clients, let's put it. But usually this is not the architect, you can tell. This is the client. And who is the architect? I don't know. Probably the duck over there on the table. So he's like a duck in a park, charming, everybody likes it, but begging for food. And who is making the decision in building the city? We talk so much about space. Space is money. And you said the client is never right, I like this quote. I would say it's hardly, you never find the right client. You could put it this way. And our projects were, you cannot sit as an architect in the office waiting for the client to knock on your door. This never happens. At least it's never the right client then. But we were thinking of how can we develop project, how can we promote ideas, or how could we even become the client ourselves? This is what the Lovo House is about. And you remember the Monopoly guy. When we talk about architecture, we cannot avoid the question of the ground. Who owns the property? Who has the hand on the property? We have to address this issue. If not, we will not change the way housing is established. We will make little changes in design, but I think that's not enough. Because we talked so much about how sustainability has to get into the business, but it's not there. It's not yet there, and I saw your ideas, and I liked a lot of them, but some of them, I'm sure you have to convince so much the client, and even so, you have to bring these projects really into happening. So the last 3 days, my partner and me, we were in Lisbon. We saw a lot of empty houses. How can it be? We're talking about a crisis of apartments. I hear different numbers. I heard something like 10 or 15% of empty houses, empty apartment gross area in Lisbon. And you have to address this issue. This is not possible. This is not sustainable that these houses are empty. And you talk about building new settlements across the airport or on other parts of the periphery of Lisbon. I think this is something very important, that you start to get the city working again. So how to get the right client? Never mind, we don't go through this whole scheme, but this is the idea of the cooperative. This is a 120 years old idea in Germany, how like a lot of people, it can be 500 or 1,000, they gather and they start their cooperative. And this cooperative builds. So it's not like, it's usually there's this municipality and they say we need 100 cheap apartments, cost controlled. And there are a lot of people earning money with this project. Let's say 30% on top of it, probably 50. If it's a Genossenschaft, if it's a cooperative, we can use this revenue. There is no 30% on top. We can use this for making better and more houses. So this idea has to find a renaissance, I think, whole over Europe, because I really believe if we want to build according to the needs of the people have to get empowered. Now we come to the project Shared Space Malmöer Straße. Of course, when you start a project like this, like with, in this case, 24 different parties, and at the end 60 people living in the house. You have a lot of communication going on. And so this on the left side, you see most part of the group. On the right side, you have also neighbors who protest. So we had meetings like this, and because it's a gentrification, and they never want a change in the neighborhood. Nobody wants a change, but everybody wants apartments. So there's a contradiction you have to deal with as architect also. You see, this is the inner part of Berlin. This is the public transport, the S-Bahn ring, the black line. And this project here is the one we talk about. It's in a very dense urban area. And later, Wenke will talk about Lobo and this LOFT project. That was the lot of the shared space project we found. It was a hut, essentially 80 years old, and it was used as a, it's a bit hard to describe it, as a social meeting point. It's a thrift store, but it was run by a church-like organization, and it was an important plot in this neighborhood. And we found this lot, and of course it was clear from the beginning that this hut had to go. But we knew we will be part of gentrification, and I think this is what happens all over and will happen in the future, gentrification, but you can control a little bit of the things. And so this is the house you see when it was finished, and you see on the ground floor that there is a store, and it's now you see it from the inside. From the outside, it looks like a new building, and here you have still. I think we did a good job in getting the feeling of the old store again, and you see like old people meeting and mixing inside. And a private client would not have made this store, because this area costs money, and you could have built an apartment also in the ground floor in Berlin. But this group decided to take the money in the hand, and they made a long-term contract with the people running the store, and they get rent, but it's only rent without revenue. And this is the cool thing is, it was Wenke's and my idea to put this store back here. But it's a cool thing if you have 24 clients, because then you can, this Roman sentence, divisa et impera. So we did this not on purpose, but you have split interests in a group. And everybody wants this house to be built. At the end, you have really a position as an architect. You can say, of course, we can build it, but you have to take this. And it's not, I don't want to say we should act like this, we are not dictators, but I just want to explain how some things sometimes work. And in this case, we could use it for the good, I think. So here you see the facade, you see the little green plants. In our case, we decided not to put the plants on each floor. They start from the ground, and even after 5 or 6 years, you see the facade gets a little bit wild. So of course we like that. The people use the facade. And yeah, that's what it looks now. After 7 years, it's a Glycinia wisteria. I can recommend. I don't know whether it works. It grows here in Portugal. You have much nicer plants, I would say. So now we have to talk about communication and the relationship of space. You know this famous iconic, of course, moment. I don't know which student it was. I took a picture yesterday of his food. Probably you're sitting here in the audience. And so Alvaro Siza decided to put this right in the direction of the movement. So I think we have really to understand the movement. We have to understand the relationship of space. And when you start a project, you have to make the basic decisions. It's very simple diagrams now, but you make basic decisions that work for the whole life, or probably for the whole time of the living time of this house. In this case, it was clear we have to, of course, there's a gap between the 100-year-old buildings, and we have to go like this more or less. That was clear by the city planning. But then it would have the most logical thing to do 2 staircases because given the size and the typology of the adjacent buildings. And we decided to, but it took a while, that we make 1 staircase. So what's so interesting on this issue? The interesting part is we were building for a group of people. These people got to know each other over the process of building. So it's not individuals. And if you want to use the staircase and the means of circulation also as a social space or communicative space, you have to understand that if you make 2 staircases, of course it's the person from staircase number B, or this is the person you don't meet accidentally. So again, it's a very simple thing, but we decided to make to make 1 staircase and to put open corridors on the back. Also to deal with these means of circulation, because that's pretty all we have. We cannot add money and space to make communicative spaces, but we could work, of course, with the means of circulation. So you enter the house through a lobby, and also this little detail on the door. Of course, it's of communication in different scales. And we go ahead. This is also, it's multifunctional. It functions as a lobby every day, but you can also use it for different purposes. And when it's used, of course, you take the ramp to the garden and you enter the house from the back. So multiple connections visually, but also like walkable connections in different ways. That was important for us. Not arbitrary, but in a logical way. So from here, now you see how you enter the garden. You see the ramp that leads down to there's a big bike garage. And of course, since you did not have to put insulation, it was fun for architects also. We needed some fun part to make some concrete, nice structures. So this is the backside of the facade. And these open corridors, we call them Laubengang in Germany. They have a very bad reputation in Germany because they were used a lot in the 60s in social housing, and most of them have very small windows on the very high part, so they feel not very inviting, and they're in bad condition. So we tried, it sounds like a good system, but how can we twist this into a really good system? And so we decided to do 2 things. We organized it with duplex apartments, like maisonette. So this means you enter the apartment from the upper level, and this level, of course, this belongs to this apartment. This is a sleeping room, bathroom. This is super private, so nobody walks in front of you. And even here, we could use these windows are high up, but not so very high up, so they're not excluding you. But how could we give privacy to the inside? Because we wanted to avoid that people put curtains or jalousies or marquees on it all the time. We really wanted to get this connection working. I have to get to this scheme. So the trick, you can call it a trick, was that the Laubengang, this corridor is where the red people are, is on one level, and you enter the apartment on the same level. But as soon as you are in the apartment, you get 2 steps up. So in this kind of, let's call it communicative hierarchy or social hierarchy, when you are in the apartment, you're of course private, you're vulnerable, and so we put the person in the apartment on this higher level to look up to the public. And it's a very subtle, small change, but it really made this Laubengang work. So, and it's also a small Laubengang, but even so, people use it, people meet there, and I would say it's an interesting scheme. Now again, you see how the kitchen always overlooks the Laubengang and how the person in red is on the lower level. So this was just after completion. On the left side, now let's talk about architecture in a traditional way. On the left side, you see how you enter the apartment. And these two steps make it that you enter between the upper level and the lower level. Of course, it's a small difference, but you can tell that it makes the space more, it combines the upper and the lower level. It's not that you have some of these duplex apartments, you have to look for the stair, but our approach was more to get it together. And on the right side, a little detail, you know, from the upper part of this building here, you have this stone bench. And when you step on this stone bench, you have the same situation like here. You could fall down, so it's against the building code. So behind this bench, there is the stair going down. So we had to provide for the building code a higher piece that protects people, especially kids, from falling down. But we made this piece so we could remove it. So people, of course, they have it in the cellar in terms they would ever have somebody come and checking the apartment. It would be there, but so they use it like this. It's a hybrid building. That's just to the end, saying something about the construction. So one of the first at this time, 8-9 years ago, it's now a very common practice that you have a massive structure of the building, but all the outside walls you made out of wood. And here, so this is a picture what a lot of people like, but to be honest, I mean, what's on it? It's a rectangular cube, and we left the surface of the concrete, and yeah, the only thing is the window. Sometimes it's really small things that you have to do as architect that really make a difference in how people use the space. Yeah. So now, Wenke, I think we go and hear something from you about LOVO and LOV project. But before you start, I want to just say 2 sentences about the structure or the evolving of LOVO. This is part of the LOVO facade. So my partner Ulrich Vogel, he sits in the audience here as well, and we decided to get really financially involved into this project. We thought this is a house that Berlin really needs, and we found a bank that financed it, and we found the lot. That all sounds very easy now, but it wasn't easy, but it is possible. If you understand a little bit about economics, and now again I have to address the ranks in the back, because you are our future. You are our, in a couple of very little years, you will be like confronted with this question: what do I do with this profession? How do I gonna work? And if you understand a little bit about this boring, a lot of people think it's boring stuff like economy, financing, and a little bit about contract law, you can, of course, bring people together to start a project. So you don't have to sit and wait for not the right client. So you have some more power than some of us traditionally think. With us, it worked out. We found the GLS bank in Germany. It's a bank for borrowing and lending and giving money. So it's kind of anthroposophic. We are not anthroposophic, but this bank is a good one. So they financed the project, and yeah, Wenke, I think you should now tell what is behind this facade.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, let's have a look at our LOVO building. LOVO means Lebensort Vielfalt am Ostkreuz. It's the German translation. It means like living place of diversity at Ostkreuz. Ostkreuz is a station nearby. And Diversidade no Habitat im Ostkreuz. This is the backside of the building, the yard, small garden. Here you can see the location in the city. You see maybe the railway tracks, and that is situated in a quarter with old buildings, and it's a very nice and popular area in Berlin. You have many cafes, restaurants, and shops around, and a very good public transportation situation is also important. Yeah, here's a program for the house. We developed the program together with the people from the organization, the so-called Gay Constellation from Berlin, who would rent this house later. It was a close collaboration all the time in all periods of construction and planning. And okay, maybe I should, you read it already, everything, yeah? I should, also in the ground floor we have the common public space, then 4 floors with shared apartments for the LGBTQIA+ scene, and more or less 25% refugees. And the upper floors are 3 apartments to rent on the free market. As you approach the building, the first thing is you notice is the cafe on the ground floor. And this is a small but important place to open the house to the neighborhood and for everyone who comes by and want to have a look and want to go in. And what is also very important, that the people who live in our house, they have the opportunity to work there. In this house live people with, most of them were not really able to work 8 hours per day. They need support in everyday life, and some are mentally ill, others are in need of care. So some of them people, they can work there maybe for 2 hours a week, and this is great for them to make this work experience. So here you see the site plan. This is a property. It's right and left existing houses. At the back of the property, it's bordered by railway tracks. It's a kind of natural barrier. The terrain rises a bit, and for us it was always a question if it's safe, yeah, for this vulnerable group to build a safe space. And but we didn't want to build high fences or walls, of course. So we also thought about a lot about the entrance, the main entrance. You see where these arrows are. So we decided for a glass door, so you have a look through, yeah, into the garden, and the entrance is between the shop and the cafe, and so it's very safe at daytime because always are people there. And yeah, so let's go inside. This is a passageway. Also here is this one, yeah. Yeah, it leads to the elevator, to the stairs, but there's also enough space to repair your bicycle. Maybe you are protected from rain. Maybe if you sit outside and it starts raining, then you can put your table inside. And this is also what we always try to do, to use the space multiple. And in general, the space was limited at this project, and so was the budget, and so we always find solutions to save space and money. And a question we discussed very often was how to create a safe space for this vulnerable group of residents, that they feel protected, but without losing the open and welcoming character of the house, and that the residents feel not locked or isolated. Yeah? So this is anyhow a contradiction, but we try to create a so-called safer space. I think many of you know this term. It's actually a space where people who face in everyday life discrimination for a different reason, they can meet and they can have a break or a pause from discrimination and can exchange with like-minded people. All these spaces have a higher sensitivity of discrimination themes, but they are also not totally safe, of course, yeah, because this is also wanted, because the people should not feel totally isolated. So we try to transfer these parameters of safer space to the architecture of the building. We use, how you can see, the doors behind, we use translucent and transparent and permeable materials like fine steel mesh, and the doors are locked in the night, but we avoid to erect high fences or walls here in this area, yeah? So that the house remains its open character, also with all the windows and the balconies and other things. And also the concept of the mixture of the inhabitants of the house follows this safer space concept. People who are not in the LGBTQIA+ scene can rent the upper 3 apartments and also the small store in the ground floor, and so their visitors come in, and so it's also not really isolated, yeah? Because we don't want to stigmatizing the people and also the house in general. Yeah, this is again the back. The chestnut tree in the middle was very nice, and fortunately it survived the construction period. And you can see on the right is the open staircase. And open staircase concept has many advantages. You save costs and materials, and because you need no insulation, you are more free in design, because here in this case we showed the poor concrete. We wouldn't do it now, yeah, because concrete is now a kind of no-going, but it was some time ago. And yeah, and if you have a look to the 5th and 6th floor, no, sorry. First, the airy staircase. If you leave your apartment, you come in this open, airy space. And we try to avoid long, closed corridors or staircase without daylight and a bad smell, like in nursery homes or so. And as you can see on the small picture, the tree is growing and the branches reach almost into the staircase, which is very nice. So here's a floor plan of a regular shared apartment. You enter the space here in the staircase over the yard, and then this is a common kitchen, no corridor or something. Here you can go this way, and then you are back to the street. It's a kind of circular thing. So we try to avoid all the time dead ends. And yeah, this is a private room. Genau, we designed a simple furnishing for one room as an example. Here are some common spaces, barrier-free accessible bathroom. We put an effort to design a beautiful bathroom for people also in wheelchairs. Yeah? And here's the kitchen in use. This guy was not Corona mask. This young man does not want to be recognized. And here you can see a private room, and we think the guy feels at home there. So here are the 2 upper floors. This is a kind of 3 maisonette luxury homes, access via open corridors again, also Laubengang in German. And yeah, these apartments are luxury in a spatial sense, with 4 balconies, great views, and they are to rent on the free market. And the high rents contribute to the financial concept of the whole building. So it's a kind of cross-financing. Also the higher rents in this upper floor support the lower floors. Yeah. So here a picture from the backyard. It's a very friendly atmosphere when in the afternoon when the sun shines through the leaves. And it was the first time that we decided to use colors, not only as an accent or something, or for small things, but for the whole building. And as we all know, the perception of colors are very personal and subjective, but in the end it really makes a difference, and we are really happy that we decide 4 colors this time. And we try to develop a sensitive graduated color concept, and it makes the building really more friendly and inviting, I think. So our next LOF is a LOF with double V. It's situated also in a nice area in the west of Berlin. Nearby is also a train station, and also it's a very nice, vibrant, popular area. We are almost ready with the planning now, and the construction site has already started. It's a kind of extension. The first Lovo building in the foreground was an existing building converted in 2011, and we are planning in the yard now the new one. Yeah, here's a visualization of the building. Again, we have an open airy staircase, and this time with more space for informal meetings, and many space for a community, like a library, 3 common rooms and 30 to 100 square meters, and a full equipped kitchen and different other things. A bit closer. So here, this time we have also a special mix of LGBTQI plus people, and the mix is also more special, like in the other building before. It's we include also very young people. There's a shared apartment for teenagers, and we have also student shared apartments, and also again for older people in need of care, and also 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. It's a very mix of different forms of living. So, and this time it's a wooden structure. Also the supporting structure is made of wood, the walls and the ceilings. It's so-called glued laminated timber. And we are mostly excited this time about this type of so-called cluster apartment. I think many of you know this term. Also every inhabitant has an own very private space. It's here this area with the greenish windows. And it's relatively small, but there are spacious common areas for all. And we try to find really a good balance between the private and the common spaces. For instance, there are 3 entrance doors, so you don't have to go all the time through the kitchen if you do not want. So you have other possibilities. And so you can divide it with curtains, you can have a guest room maybe inside, you can furnishing it, of course. And so I think if you have if you compare it with a 30 square meter apartment, you have much more possibilities here to do anything. Also you have a full equipped kitchen, you have a big table, you can invite a lot of friends, but you can't if you live in a small 1-person or 1-room apartment. So, yeah, the whole space is 280 square meters, and the common area is more around 100 square meters. Here, if you into the private units, it's 17 square meters, and including a very nice private loggia. So here you see the bathroom, and the bathroom is very, very small. You have only a toilet and a shower. And if you go outside, you have the sink outside, so it can be also the sink for your plate or a glass. And we try to make everything possible in the own unit for, like, it's not a kitchen, of course, but you have a sink, yeah, on a very small scale. so that you don't have to leave your private space if you do not feel like. And yeah. So here you can also see that this arrangement of the walls opens the space more up and lets the space appear larger and allows an optimal use, I think. So back again to our opening party from the Lovo. Hopefully we will have a nice opening party in 2025 when our next project is hopefully be ready, or 2026. Yeah. So how much time we have now for, because I thought about to say some last sentences. 5 minutes. I have 5 minutes, so that's not quite nice. But yesterday, I must say, I was a little bit, after a while, I couldn't really listen again, and I felt tired, and it was a little bit too much, maybe. And so I said, maybe we should try something different now. And yeah, sometimes it's also good to surprise ourselves. And so I would like to do a little meditation with you all. Could you please all put your handies aside, your mobile phones? Close your laptop, please. Okay, everyone ready? Yes, it will be a short meditation. Make yourself comfortable on your chair or where you sit. So, silence, please. Close your eyes. Slowly. And like we did yesterday in the last lecture with Rachel Castro, just try to connect to the silence first. We talked a lot yesterday and today. You as an audience, you listened a lot. Let's have a pause of talking, listening, and thinking. It's never totally quiet. Includes unintentional sounds, without judging, without wanting to know what it is, how it comes from. And let's connect to our bodies. How do you feel if you look more inside? Do you feel your sitting bones maybe on your chair? Your feet on the ground? And now take a deep breath into your belly, into your chest. And try breathe out as slowly as you can. A deep breath into your belly, into your chest, and breathe out as slowly as you can. In your own rhythm. Do it 4 or 5 times just for you, Breathe in, breathe out, very slowly. I think many of us are separated from their bodies, while the brain is overloaded all the time with informations. We don't see or feel or sense ourselves as part of the nature, as part of the ecosystem. And I think that's one of the main reasons why we are not able to protect our environment. So you can let it go, come slowly back. It was really beautiful to see you all in silence. It's a wonderful feeling, also a spatial feeling. Wow. And really, I'm dealing last years also with dance and movement, and I think there are many many themes related to the body in architecture. There was in the old German Bauhaus, there was also a subject. It was called Leibesübungen für Gestalter. This is in English. It's kind of physical exercises for designers. And this is very interesting because before you structure a building or before you go to the computer, maybe you should understand your own body first and connect to your own, to your feelings. This is also important. Where is the body in architecture? Where are the feelings? It's always this technocratic approach, and I missed always something. So that's just also for the teachers of you, maybe you can include it somehow. The body has a lot to do with architecture. That's just my personal thing, and now I'm ending. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you for your wonderful presentations, both of you. We are together here to talk about, and thank you for this experience. I think it can lead to another issues about architecture, because we are always talking, and sometimes we do forget the basics of things and our bodies and our souls and so on. And I'd like to start to make a question for both of you. That is the thing about housing crisis. It deals a lot about fear and hope, or let's say about fear and dream. And I think architects in the late years are quite apart from the real debate about politics and money. So how can architects become more active in take part of the solution and to bring back some hope and the dreaming of a better world in which architects can have a more active role? So, which one of you? Christoph?
So do we have, yeah, I think this is the key question, and I don't know the answer, but I think talking to each other is a good start, and talking to other professions is the next step. And I really think we have to encourage So you started this conference among the faculties of architecture, Beaux-Arts and landscape architect, and this is fantastic. As I said, we don't have this in Germany. We have to start this discourse, but it has to go beyond. It has to be transdisciplinary inside the faculties. But we, of course, have to approach the next conference here, Teresa and Luis. This goes to you. I hope there will be another one, or the third or fourth one. One could probably try to include at least one panel with probably with investors. They're not all bad, sorry, and developers, politicians, so people who are involved in these processes, so that we can sit on the table and talk about this also in this area. So, but probably you want something to add.
Yeah, I completely agree that it starts with talking, right? We are living tough times for housing, but I mean, this is a basic condition for human to exist in this planet. It was always one of our main topics is to find a home. Anyhow, between fear or hope, we try to choose an hopeful future, a positive one where we can do small things to impact this. But yeah, I agree here with Christoph. It starts by talking, by intertwining institutions. Architects shouldn't be apart, should be involved, like and politicians should be involved, the financial system needs to be involved, all the shareholders and stakeholders of housing-related projects should be involved, at least as much as possible. And yeah, and from your presentation, I feel that sometimes, rather than thinking on macro strategic actions, we can start by cooperative. We can start by being cooperative, or maybe like find someone to actually to start the project, rather than just be passive. But on a national level, I mean, this is, or a European level or world level, this can be quite challenging.
I'm going to address to the public. If you have any questions, please do. If you want to say it in Portuguese, you can do it also. You can translate, don't be fear. Yeah, here.
Really fascinating presentation. We've heard I'm from London. We've heard about your cooperative housing projects in Berlin, and there's that sort of project happening on a very small scale in London, and on a quite rarely. I suppose I'd be interested to, and maybe I missed this in the presentation, but to know a little bit more about, as you say, the financial model. Where did these amazing sites in the center of Berlin, where did they come from? Were they provided by the city, for instance? Who paid for the sheltered housing component of the project? Was that provided by money provided by the city? And who paid for the construction of the project? Who pays for the ongoing the sheltered housing component of the project? Who paid for it?
Yeah, it's this is the key question, of course, and I want to put it differently. We talk about housing in the control, or housing for people in need, or also here in Portugal on the controlled housing market. These are projects, they also need a site, and they also need money to build. So somehow money is there, if the will is there. Obviously the will is always all over the place. And the only question for me is how to make it very efficient so that we don't either lose money on the private developers and private contractors too much, so this revenue part, this 30%, we can use for better buildings, and also not losing so much money on inefficiency and the bureaucracy. If it, like, for example, in Berlin, we have 4 huge companies that are owned by the municipality. It's a Wohnungsbaugesellschaft, but they are very inefficient when it comes for them to building. So this is why I really like to go into these smaller, efficient structures again. And where did the lot come from? Yeah, this is of course the key question again. This was a lucky situation that Berlin has this huge, probably it was like this, how the prices of properties went on in the tens between 2010 and 2020. And we could get hold on, there's even a third project on properties in the early 10s. So it was before, it was probably here and not here. But again, each city, even Berlin, has lots in their own hand. They say it's hard to develop, they say they are on the wrong position, but they have to give this to prioritized to cooperatives or to initiatives. And they talk about this for 10 years in Berlin, or for 15, how they make a concept process of giving land to initiatives. What did you say? It's 1 or 2 per year, probably. Yeah. They do, because they can't manage to do it, or they have fear. We're talking about fear. I don't see so much fear about the players or the architects. I see a lot of fear in the political and administrative level. Unfortunately, this is a very, very big problem, that they are not willing to make decisions. And the last questions I didn't understand, the shelter costs, or what this?
Part of these amazing projects is sheltered housing. People perhaps who can't pay themselves.
No.
No, these are also your cluster flats.
Yeah, it's also, you use that, I mean, the most states pay for people in need anyway, in any house, and here we channeled it into that they have a contract and they get it like directly from the state, so these shared apartments. So
who ends up owning the whole building? Is it just a collective? Everybody who lives there owns the building?
What I think is the best is the old way of cooperative. So that's a building cooperative, they're really the people who live in it, they are the shareholders. We couldn't, I think this is hopefully the next project we are involved in. In our case, it's the shared space Malmöer Straße. It's like really 24 condos now. It's a property. So 24 people get together, they put their money on the table, and they are the client. So this is, I think it's a good way of doing, but it's not the best way of doing. And I really believe this, again, the cooperative idea, we have to really, it has to get back into our minds, and we have to talk about this and get more knowledge about this, because this is not a new thing. All over Europe, 100 years ago, it worked. Why does it not work now anymore?
Yeah, if you're, for example, in Vienna, you do not have this this extreme problems with housing, because they had a lot of cooperatives for living, and so it's really, I think this is the only way now in a capitalist system, to do something else. And what we do was also different, and also not really in the capitalist sense, but in general, you have to find solutions who fits at this moment, So, and there are often some possibilities.
Morning. Thank you for the presentations. I have a question for Wenke about this project for the Lovo. You mentioned that you developed the project with the queer community. I'd like to know more about how you did it, because we know that the queer community, they have their different forms of using the space, of constituting families, for instance. So how they were involved in the process. You mentioned that is a house for those who need. Is it possible to think about with not for, but with designing for with them or for them? That's how far it was with them. And if they were listening and took decisions with you, so how this process?
No, actually, I must say we did not really make the program with the people, with the potential residents because they were not really known at this time. So we developed the program with the organization, which is a social organization for gay people before and now for LGBTQI+. And so, but this was also good because they have a lot of experience. Yeah? They have more than the experience and we have, and they have experience with clients, with people who in need, because they run also a space before. And so we trust them anyhow, yeah? And this was also interesting. They said something very different things what we said before, what we saw it, and so it was really interesting and process, yeah. And yeah, so I think you mean it's if it is about participation or more or less, and honestly, participation is. I really like the idea, but if you are an architect and you have to build the building and you have maybe not extra money for this or so, then it's really hard to involve all the people, all these interests. You get crazy in a way, yeah. So, and we know it from Berlin, yeah, from other colleagues, from very, very nice projects from Haus der Statistik, yeah, or from Dragoner Areal and so on. They are really bigger areas where they try to involve everyone. But if you ask the architects, they are really, not in a lecture like here, you would say, yeah, it's a super project, but if you ask them, you see, they are totally, their nerves are really destroyed. And so I think it would be, also for the students, it would be in future very good if maybe you are just an expert for moderating these processes. This is really absolutely needed, yeah? And I would also like to do it if I not have to build the house in addition, yeah? So if I just there for the moderating, it would be great. And I think we should spread this more on several shoulders, then it will work.
There's one over there.
Good morning. My name is Maxim. I'm from Universidade Fernando Pessoa. So my question is to the Mass Labs. Unfortunately, sometimes we see that the public spaces are unoccupied or forgotten and neglected by the people. So what do you think are the key features when designing these places in order to them not to be forgotten? Thank you.
I think the key features that we can say that maybe is like trying to create a recipe for success would be like the program, but also the equipment. So we have like when you're doing, for example, a master plan and you are placing just the housing around the public square, maybe that's not enough to make like a social interaction happen. So we need to create like or shared spaces on the ground floor, or even like public programs within the public squares, for example.
Okay, we can have one more and the last question from you. Yeah? Please.
I don't know how to handle this. I hope it is just a provocation, but I really feel sick and sad about what you did here.
But
the client is never right. How can you say this? We are serving the clients. We as architects, you cannot be as arrogant as this. It reminds me of Jacques Herzog, I was studying with him, and he was exactly the same. But he is a really first worldwide, world-class architect, and how can we dare to say that?
Because maybe, no problem. And thank you for your honesty. But the idea is not about who is right. We are focused on situations, right? We are focused on, so it's not like about the ego of being right or wrong. So I mean, when we say the client's never right, we are saying no one is right.
But it's also like a provocation, because the idea is that normally if you'd like a collective housing building, normally your direct client is the promoter and is not the end user. So basically you need to bind to realities, and that sometimes they don't match. So you know that you are not designing for the people that sometimes is like actually paying you for the project. And that's why we even do these provocations to the clients, like, because we focus on the situation itself, not on the...
Yeah, actually the direct inhabitant in most of our projects, mostly because they are public projects, is never the end user. So that's why for us we feel this quite challenging, this, and it's also up to the and sometimes this mediator between the end user and us is not. Sometimes is brief, is better. Sometimes is not, and so we are not focusing on the guy that enters the office and asks for a house and you're never right. It's not about that. It's about focusing on situations rather than egos, and focusing more like on the end user rather than the mediator that promotes either private construction or public construction.
For example, we are we are working now a lot with the Portuguese Institute for Housing, so doing controlled cost housing, and the brief that we received from the public client is based on imagining a family of a husband and a wife and 2 kids, and we know when you start the project that is not the end user, or that is not like 100% of the end user. So we try to actually subvert the brief that we get from the client in order to create more adaptable structures.
Thank you for the explanation. It helps. I think it's important to question the order which you get from the client. But for me, the client is the end user. That's why I was really confused.
Yes, okay. And at the same time, I think it's important to understand our profession more than only technicians that draw housing or draw buildings. I think we have a role more important to do in the world. We change for sure the way the people that live the cities look at the city. So it's kind of a provocative quote, of course, to make like an appeal to do more than architecture, to do more than a building, to make experience, to see the problem, not only about the construction, not only about the shape itself, but about a human being problem that we should address as well. So this is our mode, not we need clients, we have a lot, and we love them, actually, but we need to provoke them, so everything can change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. I want only to let a reflection about what we saw and listen, and this is that I think we must think about the way we communicate with all the people that we are going to serve, both clients, both developers, both politicians, and so on. Because I think the soft power that architecture can use are not in use anymore, and it must be used in a good way to make things better. So thank you all for listening.